my gosh. We are live. We are live. We are live. We are live. It is the show with no name. Oh my god. Hello. It's the Lateral. It's your boy Herms. It's your boy Jesse. And it's multiple friends. This is the show with no name coming at you live on a Sunday right before the NFL draft. It's going to be super fun. And, I figured we spent the last few weeks talking about like entirely too early ADP data for redraft, but like I said, almost the draft. It feels like a good time to sit down and talk about these incoming rookies. And I figure who better to talk about this with than people who have their eyes on these guys all the time. Oh, I'm so excited about this. We got the homie Jeff, we got the homie Felix. Oh my god. Introduce yourselves.
Sure. Jeff Bell at For Whom J Bell Tolls. I'm active with Fantasy Pros, active with GoingFor2, and my new show that just launched, the Devy Royale. So we cover a lot of college football. We talk a lot about a Devy, and I talk a lot about Dynasty, but I do love some redraft too.
Felix Sharpe at Sharpe Review on Twitter. I'm also one of the founders of Campus2Canton.com. If you are not familiar with the Campus2Canton format, it's essentially where you have two teams in one. You got an NFL team, just like any traditional dynasty team. You got a college team, and your college team plays against the other league college teams. And when your players graduate, they filter into your NFL team. So it's like a super deep Devy/Dynasty league. It's the best format out there. I also write, I got a piece posted on my profile right now on Texas wide receiver Troy O'Meary, and I'm on the DevyDebate on Wednesday nights, one of three hosts, myself, Austin Nace, and Matt Bruning. So that is where you can find me, always talking football in some capacity somewhere. At Sharpe Review is where you can find me.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. We got the college guys coming in to talk about the college players. Because, for as much as, me and Jesse are confident in our skills and doing all the professional stuff and all the redraft stuff, this is an area where, we have our interests, but you got to bring in the experts. You always got to bring in the experts when it comes to this stuff. So before we get into it, Jesse, if there's anything that you would like to plug and tell people about, go ahead and get that out of the way.
Yeah. So we have a fun upcoming thing with the Lateral. We have Big Games Fantasy Sports that we're going to do. So I'm excited to do that. It'll be out. It's revolving a mock draft. It's going to be really fun. So I'm excited for that podcast to come out. But you can find me on Twitter at BGF Sports. Super fun.
Hell yeah. And I think I said it before, but if I didn't, you can follow me on Twitter at HermsNFL. Find me nowhere else. I don't want you to find me anywhere else. This is the only place I want you to find me. And let's just get into it. I'm just really excited about this. I mean, oh my gosh, because I think one of my favorite parts of doing redraft is always just like finding that rookie that's going to be like the key to your team's success. And, maybe it takes half of the season for them to finally break out and have that, the role that you want rolling into the playoffs. So you can help, ride a guy to the championship, because like last year we had players like, Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins, it takes a minute. It takes a minute. It's a little frustrating, but hey, when it pops off, boom, you're good to go. And oh my god! And every now and then, you get some rookie quarterbacks that might have some impact. Rookie wide receivers. There are a couple every year, especially this last year. We had a really interesting class. Oh my gosh, it was fabulous. But the 2021 class, so this is going to be interesting, because for obvious reasons, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was this virus that kind of screwed up a lot of stuff. We're going to be relying on some outdated tape for some guys. Some haven't even played in over a year. All this, some conferences had shortened seasons and all that. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But, that's not going to stop us. That's not going to stop us from giving you the best information possible to help you try and do your best for fantasy football. So, without further ado, I think it's important to start with the second person who touches the ball every time that an offensive snap is played, because it goes from the center right into the hands of the quarterback. The quarterbacks. And the first overall pick in the draft, unless for some reason whoever is in charge of the Jacksonville Jaguars has an aneurysm, Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. I mean, what is there to really say that hasn't already been said? I mean, the dude's fantastic. And have you seen his hair? I mean, come on, he's gorgeous. Oh, gee, I'm gonna start with let's throw it on down. We'll go around the horn. Jeff, anything you got to say about Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a very productive fantasy player starting out. It's really curious. I'm really curious to see what happens with Urban Meyer's offense. Obviously, I'm a Buckeye and I'm not going to be shy about that, but we've seen again and again how much he relies on the quarterback to rush the football. And we've seen that be a recipe for fantasy success. It's something that we've seen Trevor Lawrence do while he was in college. So we know he's got it in the toolbox. And for my view, he's right in that tier in redraft where if you're waiting on quarterback and you're going to throw a dart, maybe you're definitely not going to draft one of these top guys and you're looking to build. What I like to do with my redraft strategy, I wait on quarterback and I pick two different guys late. Like last year I hit on Tannehill, but you're going to spread that risk out between a couple guys and hope one of them pops early in the season that you can ride that. And I think that Lawrence projects as one of those guys who can be useful in the fantasy on the redraft scene straight away as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff talked about toolkit. Trevor Lawrence has everything that you need in his toolkit. And I think one thing that we've seen with rookie quarterbacks who are as talented as Trevor Lawrence is, they can rely on their rushing ability while they're kind of working things out in the passing game. We've seen Josh Allen rely on his rushing ability. Think about Jalen Hurts relying on his rushing ability really early on. And I could think that we could see that with Trevor Lawrence. Let's not undersell that, but he can make every throw. You got Marvin Jones there. You've got DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault. They could even draft a wide receiver in this class to pair with all of those guys. And then you got James Robinson coming out of the backfield. He's got enough to be fantasy relevant this year in redraft, especially if you're waiting at quarterback, which you should do. So in that 9 to 12 range, you're getting a Konami code quarterback. Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. A lot of it has been said about Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's any secret at this point, but let's not undersell the fact that he could get you, 500 yards and 10 touchdowns this year. He could.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to know how bad that defense is, because I would be shocked. If they're good, they've looked like they've focused a lot in the offseason on improving the offense, bringing in Marvin Jones, and certainly it's going to be Trevor Lawrence's show. But I would be surprised if he's not playing from behind through a lot of the season. And we've seen that again and again, especially in Jacksonville. We saw with Blake Bortles, fantasy relevance can really come out of quarterbacks in those type of scenarios.
It's a good thing we got our resident Jaguars fan.
Yeah, I am a Jaguars fan, so full disclosure. I'll try to be as unbiased as I can.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I like Lawrence. I think he's going to a pretty good situation. The offensive line's pretty middle of the road, which I think is kind of huge for a rookie number 1 pick. Because I mean, if we look at what happened to Burrow last year, right? It's probably better they have a pretty good offensive line, which I think they do. Litter stays healthy. I don't know how I feel about Cam, but he's not terrible as a left or as a tackle. But yeah, I think they're pretty good receivers. I hope they add Freiermuth in the draft. That'd be cool. So we get like an actual tight end who can catch the ball. That would I think help Lawrence a good amount. But yeah, a lot of it's been said. I just think that the situation's pretty good. So I'm kind of high on Trevor. But yeah, I mean, I also think the rushing ability is really good to bring up too, because just watching his film, he seems like he's able to do it pretty well. And I think that's pretty fantasy relevant. So yeah.
Jesse, absolutely. Since you're a Jaguars fan, let me plug that we're going to have former Jacksonville Jaguars tackle Cam Bradfield joining our draft coverage on Friday. We got a good lineup, but since you said Jacksonville, I just wanted to throw that out there that we got a former Jaguar who's going to be joining the Campus to Canton coverage on Friday. So,
damn, that's super cool shit. Yeah, that's awesome,
dude. Oh my gosh, that's going to be so much fun. Oh, gee. Oh, yeah, dude. Honestly, I'm so here for the Trevor Lawrence love. I mean, honestly, he's being put into a situation right away where he does have fairly solid weapons around him to work with. And the combination of Urban Meyer and Darrell Bevel, I believe, there is the offensive coordinator as well. Like, they should be able to work in concert to put together something pretty interesting for, some fun stuff right away. And, and playing in a division where you're going to get the Texans twice, that's going to be helpful, And, oh, man, if I end up waiting on quarterback, that is a dude that I could definitely see myself going after, especially because, like has been said, like, he can make all the throws, he can do all that stuff, but hey, that running ability, I like drafting quarterbacks that have, the rushing upside because, those are some free points. In a lot of different scoring leagues or whatever, if you run for 40 yards, that's just as good as one passing touchdown. So don't forget that. That's very, very important. But another guy who is also very, very fast and very good with his legs is the Ohio State quarterback, Justin Fields. Now, where he ends up going, that's up for debate. I have no clue. I think it would definitely behoove the Niners to go ahead and take him at number 3, but there's also a lot of talk about, like, oh, Mac Jones. Like, I don't know. Oh, it's so confusing. What's going to happen? Oh, geez. Oh, let's go in reverse order this time. Jesse, Justin Fields. How you feeling, buddy?
Yeah, he's my third quarterback, just in terms of how I feel about them as a prospect. So, I mean, I like him a good amount. Fields is pretty good. I think this depends on a lot of fit. Like, we'll see where he goes, right? I'm hoping for San Francisco, obviously, because I think that's pretty great. But yeah, it's a little tough. I think personally, because I don't, we have Lawrence and we have Zach Wilson. We know where they're going to go, and it feels a little tougher with Fields. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty good prospect. I feel like it's a little hard to quantify, but I like the film. It's pretty good. I hope he can end up with some pretty good receivers, and I think if San Fran goes, he does. He's got Kittle, pretty good offensive line. So hoping he goes there. Otherwise, I'm really not sure where else he could go. I mean, maybe like Denver trades up or New England trades up or something like that. But I mean, I think New England would be kind of a shit fit. But I mean, Denver would be pretty good, I think. So yeah, there's other stuff that could happen. I'm not sure. The draft is going to be kind of crazy, I think. So yeah.
And funny you mentioned that, because Jeff actually has a little article that he wrote about who, some teams he think could move up and down a little bit. If you ever want to, go check that out over at Fantasy Pros. Do you want to speak to that real quick before we hand it over to Felix?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Atlanta seems like a pivot point in this draft. Obviously, we've seen the 49ers move up already, and they're going to take a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody could be in play for them. And I did see yesterday, too, we've booked Zach Wilson to the Jets for a long time, but the books are dropping the bottom out of that. It was like minus 5,000 at one point. Yesterday, it dropped all the way down to minus 2,000. And it does seem like the direction is moving a little bit. Obviously, San Francisco's taking quarterback wherever it lands. When Atlanta hits the clock, and especially if Fields is there for Atlanta, I know Matt Ryan's their guy, but he's going to be 36, and he did re-sign a contract that makes it difficult to trade him for the next couple of years. But at the same time, Justin Fields is from Kennesaw, Georgia. He's up 33 minutes up the road from Atlanta. The marketing fit alone, much less the potential on him, if he's sitting on the board, that's going to be hard for them to pass. At the same time, if they're married to Matt Ryan, I'm a firm believer that if a franchise level quarterback is on the board, you either take him, or if you don't need him, you trade that pick, because somebody will pay for it. And we've seen time and time again the value in NFL teams moving up and down the board. And so Atlanta, I think, would be a prime opportunity. And then Miami at 6 would be another team that I could see potentially moving down again. There was some rumblings that came out last week that they might look at that again. Just again, the same thing. There's 5 quarterbacks in this draft that everybody's got they're different 1s through 5s, and teams are going to see that. And as the scarcity comes off, if we have a situation where 4 quarterbacks go in the top 4 picks, if Cincinnati doesn't move down, then I think Miami could be moving too for a team to come up there. But it'll be interesting. But I do think that Atlanta is kind of that inflection point where they could take a guy and they could sit him, and it Fields would be a fantastic fit there. I love Fields. I have Fields as 1A versus Lawrence as a 1B. I just think they're right there. And I think Fields is just as much generational quarterback as we've seen. Most years he'd be the slam dunk number 1 quarterback in the draft, and he just runs up in the year where Trevor Lawrence is there. But I do think that he could benefit too from sitting for a year. He hasn't played as much quarterback especially as Lawrence has played, but even as Zach Wilson has played.
Yeah, that's because he was sitting behind Jake Fromm at Georgia before he transferred to Ohio. Yeah, before he transferred to Ohio State. But a lot of good points there. That San Francisco trade created essentially a domino effect, and I think we're going to see it play out for the draft. Yes, the Duluth High School, I believe, right outside of Atlanta. If Justin Fields went there, it would be great for the city, him coming back home. I agree with Jeff on that. I also agree if you have a franchise quarterback available, you just go ahead and take them. We've seen this happen before with Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees in San Diego at the time. So Matt Ryan is in his 30s. They just signed him to a big contract, but still, I mean, I think Justin Fields could be your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years. If you lined up all 5 of these quarterback prospects, Lance, Fields, Lawrence, Wilson, Mac Jones, I think that just in a lineup, and you've never seen him play before, you would pick Justin Fields. That's the one I want to take. He's 230 pounds, runs a 4.45. He is accurate as hell. However, if there is a weakness with Justin Fields' game, I would say that you often get less than the sum of his parts. He's not particularly aggressive in the running game. I don't know why that is when you can run a 4.45 and that's legitimate. But when you watch him play, you would think that you would see, you would think that you would see some sort of dynamic rusher, and he just doesn't play that way. Like the comparisons for Fields to me are more on the pocket passing end of the spectrum as opposed to the dual threat end of the spectrum. I know that doesn't make sense, and it really doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean that he won't change his style of play once he gets to the NFL, but what he's been for 2 years at Ohio State is a deadly accurate, efficient drop back passer, and he runs when necessary. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, I think you look at not 2020, but in 2019, that quarterback room at Ohio State was weird because they lost Haskins earlier than what I think they had planned on, and Burrow transferred out. And all of a sudden, they just had Fields, and they had guys like Gunnar Hoke, and there was a dramatic drop-off if Fields were to go down. And I do think there was some tentativeness that was coached into him in regards to running. Mm-hmm. And then we saw him get hurt in the Penn State game. He hurt his knee, and it affected him in the Michigan game. And the running game just the latter half of the year after that knee injury. He got surgery right after the Clemson game. He didn't use it there. And last year, it's just so weird. It's a COVID year, and Ohio State had games canceled left and right, and it was just a really weird year to take too much out of. I do agree that he's got that tool, and you would have liked to see him be a little bit aggressive with it. But I do think there seemed like there was some concrete reasons why that maybe when he gets into the league and gets into a situation, similar like Josh Allen, where he might start out as see it, throw it. If it's not there, run. And let me back you up on a point regarding Justin Fields. His play in 2019, him being kind of the only guy there. My co-host Matt Bruning is pretty dialed into Ohio State, so much so we get information early, and it's always been accurate. The thought is that Ohio State team was playing for a national championship. They didn't have anyone behind Justin Fields, so yes, he was coached not to take hits, not to run. So we might see him change his style of play and be more aggressive once he gets into the NFL, and that's no longer a concern. That said, if we're considering Justin Fields for redraft, if he goes to Atlanta or if he goes to San Francisco, right now he's going to sit in both of those places. So he's just not somebody I'm going to pick up and redraft. Maybe you pick him up, maybe you stash him, and you wait 4 weeks and see if he's going to take the starting job. But he's probably not going to start in San Francisco. Definitely not going to start in Atlanta. But still, all that being said, he's my quarterback too. And if I'm San Francisco, I take him. If I'm Atlanta, I take him. And I hope he falls to my Detroit Lions, and I hope they take him so he can take the reins from Jared Goff, who I'm not a big fan of. Yeah, and it reminds me of the Deshaun Watson situation where he just sat for the beginning of the season. And then as soon as he came in, I think it was either his first or second game, he had a 5-touchdown game. He just blew his mind out. And I think Fields is certainly capable of doing the same thing. And yes, I completely agree that the landing spots that I see for him now, unless the shocker happens with the Jets, he's not going to be a guy that you draft, but he is going to be a guy that, week 2, week 3, you sort out the early bench and redraft, and the guys that aren't going to hit. You might want to start thinking about stashing him, start to get to week 4 or 5, depending on how his team is performing.
100%. I'm with oh my God. Oh man. I remember the year Deshaun Watson came in or whatever in his rookie year. I had a terrible, terrible quarterback situation. I completely ignored it the entire time, but I was just like, oh, please, dear God, work out for me. And just like, oh man, that was so much fun. Oh God. And because I remember like, every quarterback I had ended up getting hurt that year, and I ended up winning the championship with Blake Bortles as my quarterback. Good times, absolutely all around. And that's the fun of redraft. Oh my Lord, yes. But I completely agree. The likelihood of him starting right away in some of these, landing spots, and there was a comment in the chat, like, why wouldn't Justin Fields start right away in San Francisco? It's like, well, they're paying Jimmy Garoppolo quite a bit of money, and he's still on the roster. If he was going to move on, I feel like there's a decent chance that would have happened already. So let's say hypothetically that New England does not address whatever, and Bill Belichick picks up the phone. It's like, I want my friend back or something. Like, I don't know, maybe, sure, but like, yeah, there's a reason that Jimmy Garoppolo is still around in San Francisco. They're gonna, have him start presumably for the beginning of the year. That's just a realistic expectation to throw out there. I think that we all like Justin Fields more than Jimmy Garoppolo. And, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I have no clue. Oh, geez. But, at the end of the day, I don't know. It's just one of those situations where, the guys that get picked with like the number 1, number 2, overall pick, like there's a certain expectation that you're going to plug them in right away. But, a lot of the teams that are looking for quarterback, not all of them necessarily have that week 1 need. So, I definitely, I'm picking up what you're putting down. You know what I mean? It makes.
Yeah, maybe you wait at quarterback. Maybe you get Kirk Cousins and then you pair him with Justin Fields to see what happens with Justin Fields if you're going to take 2 quarterbacks. So
yeah, and I would note too that it's April 25th and we haven't even had the draft yet, and it might be the type of thing where if Justin Fields is the pick with San Francisco, and maybe they're trying to hide their intentions right now from the Jets, but if he is the pick, if he is coming along the summer and is really seizing that job, much like we saw Russell Wilson when he was in a supposed quarterback competition as a rookie and he just went in and stole the job. If it's the type of thing where Fields is stealing the job, if we see somebody go down in August, Jamie Garoppolo might be a pretty solid trade candidate, where a team that doesn't really want to just punt their whole season, but they lose a quarterback in the preseason, it might be pretty tempting to bring Jimmy in at that point. So I wouldn't rule him out as being the day 1 starter. Now, if it were Atlanta, yeah, he's not. It's going to be a Mahomes situation where he sits the entire year, I'd have to imagine, short of things just really falling off the rails.
I'm with it 100%. And, speaking of other quarterbacks, yeah, there we go. That's a segue. I've decided that was a good way to transition. Anyway, the Jets, they have the 2nd overall pick, and the person that is rumored to go there is somebody I have mixed feelings about. I'm not entirely sure what to make of the BYU quarterback, Zach Wilson. He kind of reminds me a little bit of the man on my t-shirt right now, Johnny Manziel, in terms of like, yeah, it looks like it could be pretty good, but there's something about it where I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But hey, rather than me ranting about how unsure I am, why don't I hand it off to people who actually probably have more solidified, concrete opinions about Zach Wilson. So, I think Zach Wilson is a better quarterback prospect than Johnny Manziel, kind of in every conceivable way. He definitely has a better NFL arm than Johnny Manziel. The problem with Zach Wilson is his decision making. JT O'Sullivan, Matt Waldman have gone into this in depth in their profiles on him. Both independently have kind of come to the same conclusions just regarding missing kind of wide open players and opting for more difficult throws. Maybe that can be coached out of him. Now, the good thing about Zach Wilson is if he goes to the New York Jets, that's going to be a wide zone Kyle Shanahan scheme with I forget the offensive coordinator, but he was an assistant there in San Francisco, and he's coming over. Matt LaFleur's brother, right?
I couldn't remember. It's Mike LaFleur.
There we go.
That's who it is. Yeah, he's going over there with Robert Saleh. He was an assistant and had been a long-time assistant with Kyle Shanahan. So hopefully you get a run-based play-action scheme is kind of similar to what he did in BYU. Listen, Zach Wilson, for everything that's being said about him, he was a 3-year starter, started as a true freshman, unseated a 2-year, 25-year-old incumbent starter in Tanner Mangum. After the 3rd or 4th game, he finished that freshman season going 18 for 18 against Western Michigan and 4 touchdowns. You just kind of saw everything on display as far as what he could do. Had a torn labrum in high school, played through it at the start of his sophomore year. He had to get that repaired, got it repaired in January, didn't go through the spring, and then kind of had a bad sophomore season. broke his hand against Toledo, broke his thumb, against Toledo, and just didn't, play well after recovering from a torn labrum and a broken. That's a lot of trauma on your moneymaker, on your throwing arm. With the pandemic delaying everything, he spent a lot of time at the 3D QB facility run by John Beck down in California. And John Beck is a former BYU quarterback. John Beck is also a descendant, or, he comes from the lineage of Tom House. If you remember Tom House, longtime trainer of Tom Brady, Drew Brees. So he comes from that kind of career path. He was a mentor of Tom House, spent a lot of time with them, and then had the season that he had this season. Now, I don't think that the pandemic benefited any other prospect more than it did Zach Wilson, because the planets kind of aligned for him. That was an independent school that had to reshuffle their entire schedule to get, 12 games on their schedule, and, played lesser competition than they would have had the schedule been the same. But look at his sophomore year against USC. I mean, he's played Power 5 teams and has played well against them. The thing with Zach Wilson that he has to be able to do is make easier decisions, be more comfortable sticking with your reads and not jumping off the first read and going to the second, which can be a more difficult throw, kind of just seeing what's open and hitting that as opposed to improvising. If Robert Saleh, and more so if Mike LaFleur can coach that into him, he's going to be a dynamic player, because when he scrambles, he's looking to take the shot deep, and that's where fantasy points come from. So,
yeah, it seems like Jesse's got some stuff he wants to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach Wilson, like I said before, he's my second prospect. I'm a big fan. I'm hoping the Jets take him. I think will really behoove him and also the two receivers, in Corey Davis and also Denzel Mims. I think I really do like his, I'm going to call pinpoint accuracy. He puts the ball in like a really great place. Those big guys who I think have pretty good hands, good contested catchability. I like that a lot for them. So I think him going to there really presents a pretty good situation for multiple guys, not just himself. But like I said, yeah, I'm a big fan. I think you're probably right about the decision making sometimes. I get that for sure, and I'm hoping also that it gets coached out. But yeah, a lot of rookies I assume struggle with that kind of stuff too. Maybe not as much, but yeah, I'm a big fan. I also think the Jets are fairly up and coming. Probably not like this year or anything like that, but yeah, I'm a big fan of that that offensive. Zach Wilson's there. He's not like going to be in my top 12 or anything like that, but yeah, as like a second quarterback or someone you want to take late, I think it's fine to do. Yeah.
I'll give you two examples from the Houston game this past season, which I think was his highest rated game, according to PFF. There is a flea flicker play. I'm going to give you two plays, actually. There's a flea flicker play where they give it to the running back and throw it back to Zach Wilson. The boundary wide receiver on the left side of the line runs a post, and the defense bites on the flea flicker. There is nobody within 30 yards, 20 yards of this wide receiver. I think it was Dax Milan, number 5. Zach Wilson could have punted it to this guy, and it would have been a touchdown. He misses him, and he ends up throwing a contested catch jump ball to Isaac Rex. Completed pass, but bad decision-making, bad process there, especially if, and JT O'Sullivan went through this, believed that 5 would have been the first read. How do you not hit that? There was another play in that game where it's like 3rd and 14 or so, and they're running 4 verts. And if you can see 4 verts on Madden, that inside wide receiver always gets open running a bender or so, and that's usually the first read. Well, that guy came open again and would have been a first down. Zach misses him. So those are the kind of mental processing things that folks have seen in his game that you hope that someone can get a hold of them and coach those things out of him.
Yeah,
sure. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say he reminds me. I think you have the wrong Browns quarterback. There's a lot of Baker Mayfield in there, and I think maybe even a little bit of Matt Stafford too, where teams get enamored because he can make all the throws, and I think that that's what's happened. And Felix talked about too the benefit of the pandemic. I think that Ohio State having a very delayed season and Trey Lance not having a season, it really opened the door, especially BYU. I think might have been even the first college football team to start playing. It really opened the door for him to force his way onto the scene and raise his profile dramatically. I have to wonder if we had a normal season, Justin Fields started out so hot. If people were paying attention to Trey Lance all year long, if the ability to raise that profile would have been there for Zach Wilson. In terms of redraft fantasy, I just have a really hard time seeing him reaching utility as a rookie. He doesn't bring as much of the rushing floor that you're going to see out of the other three guys, and that puts him behind them in terms of my fantasy rankings when it comes to quarterbacks. He's going to be on the field out of the jump. My approach to redraft is if you don't have one of these Konami quarterbacks at the very top, I'm streaming the position. And a lot of people don't have the stomach to do that, but I've had a lot of success with that past where you're streaming to try to just catch matchups, because not having those guys at the very top, you're facing uphill battle anyways. So the idea of locking into a rookie quarterback that doesn't have the greatest weapons, maybe we see the Jets end up with a guy like Etienne or Harris at running back, but what they've got right now, Tevin Coleman, LaMichael Pirine, Corey Davis is a good football player, but he's not a guy that's going to create a fantasy monster as your quarterback, and Denzel Mims is kind of the same thing. So he's not on my radar when it comes to redraft. He's just not. But that doesn't mean he won't be a good prospect, and doesn't mean he doesn't have the ability. It's just not a guy I'm paying attention to right now for redraft.
Well, I gotta say, at the very least, I've had my mind changed about Zach Wilson. I mean, and hey, see, look, this is why we bring on people like you two to be able to talk about this type of stuff, because it's just what do I know? Hey, if y'all say he's pretty good, then I believe that he's pretty good. All right, I've changed my tune. I'm here for the Zach Wilson hype. Let's do it. Oh my Lord, it'll be so much fun. Oh geez. I guess before we get into the fourth quarterback that I think probably has more fantasy relevance, I think it would just be good to get Trey Lance out of the way, because I think he's tremendous, but I also believe that he didn't really play last year. He's probably going to have to go somewhere.
Whoa!
I was gonna say,
about to slam?
I think both Felix and I are going to slam the brakes on you there.
I was just gonna say, for redraft, I don't know if he gets an opportunity to start right away, but if I'm wrong, tell me that I'm wrong right now, because I'm excited for him. But let's just get into it. Trey Lance, let's go.
Yeah, I think we could see Trey. First of all, Trey Lance fits a skill set where even if he's not immediately the starter, I can see an offensive coordinator having a package of plays for him early on. I think the comparison for Trey Lance is, quite frankly, young Cam Newton. He is an aggressive, big, physical runner, and he's going to be used around the goal line because, first of all, the math just works in your favor when you use the quarterback to run the ball, and every offensive coordinator knows that. So you can put, you can bring another tackle in as a tight end, a tackle-eligible tight end, and, run power, quarterback power at the goal line. That's what we're going to see with Trey Lance. He is a physical player with a lot of tools. I really don't give a damn that he didn't play last year and that he played for North Dakota State. Just has everything that you would want in a quarterback. And quite frankly, we don't know if he got better. He only played one game last year, and that was a game to kind of show NFL scouts how he had progressed. But we just don't know if he is developed. I think that I'm willing to take a bet on Trey Lance, especially in redraft, where I don't think that he's going to get drafted. So if you want to pair him again with maybe you get Matthew Stafford and you say, all right, I'm going to just keep Trey Lance on my roster late, but he has absolutely everything that you want in a quarterback. And out of these five, he probably has the highest ceiling, given that rushing ability, given the fact that, he's a guy who could lead the NFL in touchdowns because he could get a whole bunch of 1-yard TDs at the goal line. And I don't want to undersell his passing ability. He has a rocket for a right arm, and he's a player that could raise the tide for all of the players around him. So, and I bet you that Jeff is going to say the same thing. I don't want to undersell how good I think this quarterback class is, and Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Trevor Lawrence, and to a certain extent, Zach Wilson are the reason why I think this quarterback class is so good.
Yeah, Trey Lance is a special player. Cam Newton's an apt comparison. I've heard early Steve McNair, Alcorn State Steve McNair. I think he's a thicker Colin Kaepernick. He kind of brings some of the same toolboxes. Dude is special when it comes to fantasy football. He's my quarterback number 3 in this class. A fun game I always like to play. I always played it with Josh. If Josh Allen were at Oklahoma instead of Wyoming, I think he would have been potentially the slam dunk number 1 quarterback in that class by a margin. I kind of played the same game with Trey Lance and Mac Jones. If we saw Trey Lance at Alabama this past year, he'd be in the conversation for probably runaway quarterback 2 in this class. If not,
and he would have started over Mac Jones at Alabama.
Yeah. And if Mac Jones were, Mac Jones is a good football player. But if he were at North Dakota State, it'd be the type of thing where he'd be a later first round pick. Like, hey, keep an eye on this guy. And I do think a lot of what is being said right now is the draft is a TV show, and a lot of what is being said right now is the media kind of laying the groundwork to make a good TV show to bring some eyeballs in. I just really don't know. I have a hard time seeing the 49ers giving up the package that they gave up to come up and get Mac Jones, given the physical traits and the special ability of both Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And I just did, I did one mock this year. I released it. It came out yesterday. I have the 49ers taking Trey Lance in my mock. I just think it's one of those things. He's a special player. It's just been quiet. It's been too quiet around him. And it's one of those things, the draft, the guys that get talked about a lot are kind of those guys that you see sitting in the green room and ESPN's got the camera on them as they're crying with their agent. And the guys that don't get talked about are the guys that all of a sudden go 3rd in the draft. And I do think that that's kind of the scenario that I see playing out with these quarterbacks.
Jesse?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll defer to both of you guys on this one. I mean, I watched a little bit of his film, but I read a lot of secondary sources on it. It's pretty tough for me to project. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about him as a prospect. I think it'd be cool to see him in Denver, but I'm not sure if that's something that is going to happen even, or is something that we'll see him a lot this year. But it just kind of feels like, and this may be a lazy comparison, but like kind of feels like he had 1 game last year. It was a COVID season, obviously. And he's playing at North Dakota State, like you guys said. So it kind of feels like he might have a harder transition to the NFL than other players. So yeah, but I'll defer to you guys. I'm not gonna plant my flag anywhere.
Jesse, my only rebuttal to that is remember how the community was down on Josh Allen. Remember how the community was down on Justin Herbert just last year. If you think about what the strengths of those players were, physical, big, well-built quarterbacks who could run the ball and had, really good arms. So just look at them at their traits. That's what we have with Trey Lance. That's the type of player that he is.
And I want to say too, it's almost the opposite. His processing is almost the opposite of Zach Wilson, where Trey Lance is going to. It's the old saying: you're never going to go broke making a profit. If Trey Lance has a tight end or a fullback that he sees that's open, that he can move the football, he's going to take that read. Whereas Zach Wilson, I think, is looking more towards making the big play, and I think it kind of gets knocked on. It's one of those things, we're talking about that needing to be coached out of Zach Wilson, but that's already been coached out of Trey Lance. And I think it's just a special talent.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, yeah, haven't really watched too much of the film because I just watched the 2020 game because I think that was the most relevant. So I haven't watched too much on it. It's hard for me to view with, the D2 stuff. So I'm just kind of, not really sure where to go with him. But I will say that, yeah, I'm not super high on Herbert or Allen that much. I like Allen more for sure. And I like his receiving options a lot better too. But I mean, that's whatever. I think Stephon Diggs was like the best receiver in the NFL last year. So I probably have a different, barometer for those kind of things, that kind of comparison. So just want to say that. Yeah.
Hell yeah, I did. And I feel you, man. And, before I hand it over to you to transition into the running backs, we got one more dude to throw out there. His name's already been brought up a couple times, more than a couple times. The guy from Alabama, Mac Jones. He's built like me. But, hey, he did pretty well last season. Now, and I see a lot of debates like, well, was that Mac Jones being good, or was that, the weapons around him being really good, making him look good? I don't know. That's not really my area of expertise, but thankfully, as I've said multiple times, we have people who can answer those questions for me. So that way, by association, I look smart. So if anyone wants to go ahead and just talk about Mac Jones before we get into the running backs, let's throw it out there, because there's a lot of fun stuff.
The same way that you're going to rely on us for our opinion on Mac Jones, this is one where I'm going to rely on the opinion of others, quite frankly, and the NFL. I think that we're going to, if we see Kyle Shanahan take Mac Jones at number 3, then that should tell us something. Let's not assume that we're all smarter than Kyle Shanahan. I mean, that's something that the fantasy community loves to do, is to trash players and believe that they're smarter than these NFL coaches. I don't want to assume that. He is my least favorite out of the 5, but if Shanahan likes him, then that's going to tell me what I need to know. And that Shanahan has developed quarterbacks. So I don't have a lot to say about Mac Jones. He's not going to give you the Konami code. But in redraft, if San Francisco takes Mac Jones, I don't think that he's going to somebody who's going to play this year. I don't think that he's going to be somebody that you're going to want to draft. But don't try to. I mean, this is more like of a dynasty league thing. Don't think that you're smarter than the NFL. Go ahead and pick, because we've made that mistake before. I've mentioned Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, people thinking that they're smarter than the NFL. Go ahead and take that late first-round pick and pick up a player who a team is high on and is going to end up as a starter at some point.
Yeah, I completely agree. We do have to, if Kyle Shanahan takes him, he sees something. I think that Steve Sarkisian was the best offensive coordinator in college football last year. A lot of what Alabama's scheme was phenomenal, and their ability to create mismatches. I don't understand how, as an Ohio State fan, Tuff Borland ends up on Travis Etienne and Devonta Smith over and over again in these big games, but somehow that continued to happen. And, some of that is the coaching, that be able to put these players in the situation and get them open. So I do think that a lot of what Mac Jones was doing was throwing to wide open receivers. But he hit the throws too. You can have a guy wide open, and we've seen that things move too fast for guys, or they miss guys, and he didn't do that. And so he certainly is capable of hitting the throws, and whether or not that translates to the next level, that's going to be on the coaches. And I think Felix is exactly right. As a guy that, the community as a whole is certainly down on Mac Jones, but once you get past, if we're going to jump the dynasty just for a minute on your rookie draft, once you get Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts, I think are both special players. And if you're desperate at running back, they're right there. But it's really hard to separate who your maybe 2 or 3 wide receivers versus maybe the 7th or 8th wide receiver, and they all are phenomenal. So, yeah, if you got one of those late picks, and especially if you need quarterback, but if you're playing Dynasty Superflex, you're always looking at quarterback. Don't rule him out. He certainly can develop and be an NFL starting quarterback.
Yeah, I like a lot. Yeah, I like a lot of what you guys said. Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with a lot of that. He threw to some very wide open players. I don't feel like I feel like these 2 caliber players are better than Judy and Ruggs were last year. Personally, I think I don't know if that's controversial, but these guys are really good. I actually have Mac Jones as a prospect as my 6th rated guy. I have Kyle Trask in front of him. I guess that's probably a hot take, but I feel like both these guys had some really good weapons on both their teams, and they both look good, but I think, Kyle Trask kind of had a little bit of a harder situation, kind of. But yeah, I think a lot of what you guys said was correct. I'm unsure where he's going to end up too. I mean, he can go all the way from like 3 to maybe like 15 to maybe like the Bears at 20 or whatever. So I don't know where he's going to go. I think that's also really tough. It's definitely harder to predict than I think Fields. But yeah.
I feel that, buddy. And hey, like I said before, unless there's any other quarterbacks that we want to throw out there, I think we got the group that we need to know about for redraft and whatnot. And running backs, man. Running backs. This is, the rookie running backs. It's always so much fun. You know what I mean? There's something about the rookie running back for redraft that's just always such a blast. It's such a blast, and like last year we saw a lot of crazy stuff happen, and but that was a very, very talented class. And it's my understanding that by comparison, this one is top heavy, and then after that, it's a lot of dudes that belong in committees doing all this, that, and the other. I mean, we don't have somebody quite on the level of whoever, but there are some guys that I think are pretty interesting. And Jesse, if you want to get the ball rolling with whoever it is that you want to talk about first, let's go ahead and get into that.
Sure, we could talk. I think about Najee Harris first, if y'all are interested in that. He's not my first guy. I guess I have some pretty different rankings, but he's actually my third rated running back on my big board. I think he's got a lot of good traits. He's got a lot of different things that he does really well. I'm just not sure if it's all coming together or will all come together next year. But I mean, running backs do, I think, especially working running backs, really, it's even more than quarterbacks care about their placement. Their offensive line, I'm really like a big believer in like the offensive line being good, and then your running back is a little bit, kind of replaceable, possibly. I mean, there's obviously exceptions, but yeah. So I think it's a lot like that. I don't know. I'm just not really a huge fan of Harris. I think this is kind of a not super great running back class, especially for redraft. But I mean, if these guys go later, then they'll probably end up on better teams, which is good. So there's definitely a chance of that, which I think is pretty good if you're looking to draft one of these guys. Like, I know you want Najee to go to the Steelers terms. I think that'd be kind of cool. They definitely need a running back.
Please.
So yeah, I'm not sure how the offensive line looks. We'll see about that. But they got a good offense inside of that. So yeah.
Oh, the offensive line's horrible.
The way that you unlock Najee Harris in his entirety is to utilize him in the passing game. 6'2", 230 pounds. He's not Christian McCaffrey. I've never seen a running back used this way. He's a running back that you can put outside and then run back shoulder fades to on linebackers because he's that much bigger and he has that much body control. I don't think that there's a comparison, another running back who can do that. So hopefully if he goes to an offensive coordinator that has an appreciation for that, I tend to believe that it's going to be slow coming in unlocking him in the passing game, that he's going to be used primarily as a rusher. I mean, you just never know. But he does have that ability. I mean, he has the ability to go over linebackers and to be used as a contested catcher. And I just can't think of a running back in the NFL right now or in recent history that we could say that about. I mean, we've had a lot of players that you could throw screens out to who are kind of like satellite backs and get around folks, but to be used the way that Mike Williams is used in San Diego or LA for the Chargers, to throw fades to. I can't think of another running back that can be used that way. And that Najee Harris can be used that way. He has the size. I think he's underrated as a rusher too. I think he's underrated. He's kind of a complete back, but it's going to be up to, whatever team that he goes to fully unlock him as far as fantasy goes, because we know that that's where fantasy points come from being used in the passing game. And I just don't know if a team is going to use him that way.
Yeah, I know he came back to school and he stated that improving in the passing game was really the reason why he came back. And he certainly saw dramatic improvement doing that. He reminds me of Le'Veon Bell a little bit in the sense that Le'Veon Bell was able to be used around the formation a little bit. He's a bigger back like Le'Veon Bell. He's not going to outrun people. And for an Alabama running back, I think we've seen that before. Trent Richardson was the very worst of it, but he's very useful in the passing game. He has those skills and abilities. My concern for his size and especially the competition that he was playing against, there was a little bit of tentativeness sometimes, I think, especially around the goal line. And certainly that's got to not be there for the NFL. But that kind of goes to that Le'Veon Bell sense a little bit too, where he's taking that extra second to set guys up and things like that. I think his refinement in the passing game, and Felix has covered it perfectly. He just improved so much over a year, and he's a very special player in that regard. And so that is why he's my running back one. I've got ETN kind of right there with him. Just that the both of those guys have shown again and again that they can be used in the passing game, and that is where the ability to end up as these top half first round running backs comes out of. Landing spots can be interesting, and I think redraft more than anything, landing spot matters. I don't know if I don't know that I certainly understand the theory behind him being a fit in Pittsburgh, but that offensive line is atrocious. And the way that that offense throws the ball, like they can't run it. That last year they couldn't run it. And, some of that's certainly on the talent that they had. But again, I don't know that I think that maybe it goes back to that Le'Veon Bell thing that people are imagining his utility in the passing game, and that's the last great Steelers running back that we've seen, and hoping to create some of that magic. But that team is completely different than when Bell was there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Real quick. Sorry, Harrison, real quick. I'm curious how you feel about his like pass blocking ability, and if you think that's like relevant for him possibly being there on like more pass catching downs or something like that. I don't know if that's relevant to you guys, or what do you think about that?
It is, but it's not. He's shown that he's so good catching the football that if you're accounting for a defender one way or the other. You're accounting for a defender by putting him out and forcing somebody to cover him, or you're accounting for a defender by leaving him in protection. So it really just comes down to how the team's going to use him. I do think that's an area of his game that he certainly needs to improve at, that he's not comfortable with. But that's something that it's few and far between the complete running backs that come in and have those skills. I know Ezekiel Elliott was one of those guys that he was excellent in picking guys up in the passing game. And so the fine perfect prospects, basically, if he was a perfect prospect, we wouldn't be talking about him being in the Steelers. We'd be talking about him being in the top 10, even with running back position being devalued across the league.
Yeah. And, taking off my fan hat and putting on my analyst hat, as cool as it would be to see Najee Harris in Pittsburgh, I know that it's very much not the greatest situation in the world. Honestly, I'm kind of hoping that if like Tevin Jenkins is available or something, that the Steelers go that way and they maybe like punt on the position, maybe look at somebody like a Trey Sermon in like the 3rd or 4th round or something, depending on that type of availability. I mean, honestly, like it would behoove Najee Harris to go somewhere else where he's in a better situation to run right away behind a line that actually exists, because Pittsburgh doesn't have one, and it makes me sad. But as far as and it's very important that we continue to further highlight his pass catching ability, because I think when it comes to running backs, there are people who are capable pass catchers, and then there are running backs who are good pass catchers. And for as much as Made is about like his size and his ability to just like run through people and do all this stuff, there's some belief it's just like, oh, Derrick Henry 2.0, and I'm like, that's fairly disingenuous. I don't think that that's a very apt comparison whatsoever. I think of him as my little nickname that I have for him is a girthy girly. He kind of reminds, just like a much larger, Todd Gurley, being able to do that type of stuff. And like, I really appreciate his contact balance. He's very good with all that. And also shout out the homie Angelo. If you go to Angelo Fantasy and check out, some of his breakdowns and stuff, I mean, like the slalom technique, doing all that stuff with the footwork. I mean, like he's really good. He's really, really good. And for a guy that size to be able to be that nimble and do all that ballerina type stuff, I mean, like, Najee Harris has so many refined skills, to the point where I mean, like, oh gosh, if for any reason whatsoever he dropped all the way down to the Falcons in the 2nd round, I mean, then we would be talking about something pretty serious here. I think that would be very intriguing. And as far as redraft goes, what I'm really hoping does not happen is that he goes to a place where everybody gets really excited and he gets the Clyde Edwards-Helaire treatment, and just the helium in his reputation rises him all the way to, just like, oh, like the 6th pick in the 1st round, like you got to make sure you go out and get Najee Harris. It's like, no, I mean, I'm hoping that he lands in a situation, better for him, than, Pittsburgh, because again, the fan in me really wants to see it, but objectively speaking, it's a horrible idea. 3rd, 4th round ADP, you know what I mean? Like that type of value. I think that's where you would be able to get a return for somebody like a Najee Harris. But, that's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. What do I know? I don't know. Oh, geez.
Herms, you mentioned comps. My comp for Najee Harris is Fred Jackson. For those too young to remember Fred Jackson, he was a longtime Bills player. We're talking about the Bills. Played for the Seahawks too, but he was like a jack. Well, first of all, he was an undrafted free agent who made a name for himself, but he was kind of a master of all trades. A jack of all trades, master of none. Just a very well-rounded player, competent in the passing game. He wasn't going to run away from anybody, but a very high floor player because he was involved in every aspect of the offense. That's my comparison for Najee Harris.
I think that's a great one. I haven't heard that one, but I love that one. That's a really good one.
I like that a lot. I really do. But, so, and as was alluded to before, whatever, like, he's the RB1 for a lot of people, myself included. But I know Jesse has a different opinion for who he believes is the RB1 in this class. So why don't you go ahead and tell us so we can get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Javonte Williams. He's my number one guy. I'm a big fan of his. Let me pull up real quick what I have. Yeah, I really like just film overall. I think he's got pretty good vision. He breaks tackles pretty good. Got a pretty good stiff arm. Pretty good blocking. I love his stutter step. I'm a big fan of the film. It's hard to quantify in this kind of discussion as much, but I'm a big fan of the film. I really like guys who can cut well, and he cuts really well. I'm a big fan. So I like him, and I think he's a guy who could go. I feel like he can go anywhere. I feel like he go a lot of places. So hopefully ends up in a situation where he could be like a better Philip Lindsay kind of in a way that he's like the secondary guy, but he still gets like 1,000 rushing yards. And I think you could probably get him a lot later than people. A lot later than guys like Najee Harris and guys like Travis Etienne. So I like that a lot about him, just generally, and talking about like a redraft strategy. So yeah.
Thoughts on Javonte Williams?
How y'all feeling about it? How y'all feeling about it? It's okay. You can talk shit about me. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I like Javonte Williams. I think this is a running back. First of all, I don't like this running back class overall, but I like Javonte Williams in a David Montgomery sense. I thought that he was going to weigh in at his combine north of 220. He weighed in at 215 or 214. And it's interesting because he and Travis Etienne have different styles, but they weigh the same. Travis Etienne is more of the speed back who's not going to break a ton of tackles at all. And he weighed in at 214 and ran a 4, whatever it was. And Javonte Williams weighed 1 pound heavier, but you expect him to be able to be a little more elusive, to run through tacklers and that sort of thing. He is a player who is competent in the passing game, but not dynamic. So in redraft, I think that we're going to see him. Well, first of all, let's make sure that he gets day 2 draft capital, which I expect him to get. And then I would expect to use him as a low or mid RB2 in redraft. That's kind of what I see his ceiling this year.
I agree. I think that somewhere along the line, a comp to Nick Chubb got made, and that's just I've seen way too many people say that, and it's not even close. And him coming in at 215, I think you watch the tape, and he sticks in your mind as a guy that's like that 225, 230 type guy, and because that's how he plays. But then weighing in at 215, it really leads questions to what is really the ceiling and upside with this guy, because I don't know that. I mean, he's not even close to where Etienne and Harris are right now in the passing game, which automatically from a fantasy purpose, especially from a redraft purpose, is going to knock him down my board. I just think that he's a guy that people are desperate for the depth of the running back class, and for sometimes people want to be a little bit different. And so when you've got a guy like Etienne and Najee Harris that maybe could have come out last year and we've kind of been waiting on him, it's one of those things you watch the guy over and over again and you start to talk yourselves out of them. And sometimes you need to circle back and maybe there is looking for the next best thing. Sometimes you just take the current best thing. And in my mind, that's a lot of what's happened with Javonte Williams, where people have just gotten excited about him being more of a under the radar guy and watch his tape and think that he translates to a 225 pound, 230 pound feature back. But I mean, if he's going to be the same size as Travis Etienne, just the explosion on the tape between the two of them are two completely different players.
Yeah, and it's a little tricky. I mean, like in some of the research that I've done, I think Javonte Williams does a very good job at the second level. I think that's something that's really interesting. I think he has a really good center of gravity, and I really like the violence that he runs with. I think that's something worth highlighting. And I believe Ray Garvin at RayGQ. If you haven't checked him out, you definitely should. A long time ago, I believe he made the comparison to former Cowboys running back Marion Barber. That's the type of thing. It's like I don't know, like I could see that. I mean, like I'm not going to tell anybody they're wrong. I mean, what do I know? But like, yeah, I think because what was said earlier about David Montgomery, I think that's the type of thing I could definitely see in terms of his role at the next level, and especially with like the day 2 capital. Like, yeah, I mean, he'll probably find himself in a decent situation to be able to produce right away, but the upside is somewhat limited as compared to somebody like a Travis Etienne, who I am looking forward to speaking about. But yeah, I think those are my thoughts, I guess. But also, quick, yeah. Go for it.
I was just going to say Marion Barber is probably the most physical running back, in this generation outside of, quite frankly, Adrian Peterson. And I don't see Javonte Williams being that type of player yet, but that could be because, well, it's funny because Marion Barber split time at Minnesota with Lawrence Maroney, and Javonte Williams split time with Michael Carter. But that said, I don't know that he is that dynamic of a brute bust through you type running back yet. So I don't want, folks to think that they're getting this guy who's just going to shed. I don't know that he's that player yet. But he is, for this class, he does profile to be more of a bell cow, somebody you can give the ball between 15 and 18 times and he can catch 4 passes. And that's enough. That's enough to be a mid to low end RB2. So.
Yeah, he doesn't have the violence that Marion Barber had. He doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's a dirty, dirty word right now in fantasy circles, but he kind of reminds me of Zach Moss a little bit in last year's class where, it's just not going to pop. And I've seen a lot of people mocking Javonte to the Bills, and the Bills, I think the other guy that I'm sure we're about to talk to, Zach Moss kind of fills that role, and they need a guy that can pop.
Yeah, and also I want to say very quickly, if I misquoted Ray, I apologize. Like I'm going based off of my frazzled memory bank. So if he said that about somebody else, absolutely fact check me.
I think I am the same thing.
Okay, yeah, I just want, because I don't want to find myself in a situation where I'm catching heat just because I'm a doofus. So, just want to throw that out there. You know what I mean? If I'm always willing to be wrong. You know what I mean? Herms is for the children. Herms is for the public. Herms loves the public. So if I'm ever wrong, I mean, that I don't want to catch heat. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like really self-conscious about that for a second there because I was like, oh my God, what if I said the wrong thing? Oh gosh, it could be controversial. Oh geez. But yeah, just wanted to. I don't know. Why am I spending so much time? Let's just talk about Travis Etienne. Let's just shift the focus away from any of that type of stuff because, oh God, I'm in a weird headspace. Anyway, he comes out of Clemson University. He plays running back. Boom. There we go. Who wants to talk about Travis Etienne?
I think he's a special player. We've seen him improve over his career to the point where it's kind of interesting because Clemson used him on screens so many times and they got him out in space. And it was surprising when he came in at 215 because he doesn't run like that physical running back, but it's certainly he catches a seam and he's gone. And I think that there's a lot of value, almost like Aaron Jones like type where he's able to explode into the next level and have that utility in the passing game. And that creates a very valuable package. I'm very encouraged because I thought he was more of that 200, 205 pound back. So him coming in at 215 says that to me that he's recognizing and doing the things that are necessary for him to get his body ready for the next level. And so in that regard, I was excited to see that. Again, just the use that they've had throughout the passing game. Again, he tore my heart out in 2019 because that entire comeback in the 2020 college football playoff was on outside of Trevor Lawrence breaking some runs, Travis Etienne getting on space and making mismatches in the passing game and catching the ball downfield. He was phenomenal.
I think Travis Etienne is a player with a more limited skill set than the two players that I have above him in Javonte Williams and Najee Harris. I think that if he goes to a system where he can kind of be used in a zone blocking and kind of read the offensive line and make one cut and go, he'll succeed. If he's asked to break tackles and kind of be a more dynamic player, and I know that he had the production that he had at Clemson. However, I see a guy who relies on speed more than anything else. I think that once a linebacker or safety or anyone gets his hands on him, I think he's going to go down pretty easily. Quite frankly, I think that Travis Etienne, if I had to pick one of these three running backs to bust, I would pick Travis Etienne because I think that his skill set is the most limited out of the three. I know that he has production in the passing game, but he is in my opinion, is not a very natural pass catcher. And I know that that's a super subjective film-based take that doesn't, is not considering numbers. But I don't, if I was an offensive coordinator, I wouldn't feel confident using him beyond like swing passes and screens and that sort of thing. It's not like we're going to motion him out outside and run go routes to him. I just don't think that he's that type of player in the passing game. And if I was in redraft, well, first of all, in Dynasty, he's going to be a player that I don't own on any teams because of my opinions on him. And I would say the same thing in Dynasty, or excuse me, in redraft. I'm not sure where you would have to take him to get him, but I just imagine that there are going to be some players selected around where he's taken that I would prefer that provide a higher floor, because I think that the floor for Travis Etienne can be, pretty low if he's not in the right situation.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat as well about Etienne. I'm again not, I don't know if I've said this, but I'm not a huge fan of this running back class. But also I think it could depend on whoever gets touches in a good offensive line and a good system. We could see them, irrespective of their talent. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Etienne. I don't have too much to say about it. I think also his name recognition will probably make him go higher than I'm comfortable taking as well. So yeah, I'm probably out on him for redraft, depending on where he's going. I mean, there's always a value for someone, but yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think, at least for me, in my quote unquote evaluation, again, like take my words with an entire shaker of salt. He reminds me, I'm a big baseball fan. You know what I mean? You love those big sluggers with the home run ability, but if they swing and they miss, it's a miss, and he's the type of dude, he's a home run hitting running back. You know what I mean? He's gonna, go the distance. He's going for speed. Shout out the band Cake. But, that's just what he's gonna do, and, I don't think he runs with a lot of intent every single time. He finds a lot of contact and all that type of stuff. And, as was said, previously, like if he gets in, to that second level or whatever, and he gets met by like a safety or a linebacker, it's just like, boom, falling down. So it's like,
and he's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's not even that fast. He's a speed player, and I think he ran in the mid 4.4s at his pro day. Yeah. Because some of the faster players in the NFL, if you think of Saquon Barkley, Raheem Mostert, those are 4.3 guys. So here we're talking about and that's a pro day. That's a pro day. So a pro day, you got to adjust up. He's a mid 4.4 guy who relies on speed. I know that we see him running past people or running, long touchdowns at the college level, but there are just some red flags with his profile that are going to have me kind of not touch him in any of the fantasy leagues that I'm in. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're exactly right. Everything's relative, and I think that it's easy to not realize how special the class of last year's running backs were. And it's easy to think that you get a rookie running back and you're going to win your league, or you're going to have a difference maker. And, guys like Cam Akers that were kind of overlooked a little bit in last year's class, put them in this year's class, and they might be the number one guy by a bullet. And I do think that there's questions on the high end of any of these running backs. And I think that there's certainly, they land where they're landing because there's a thirst for those positions. But if I've got, I think there's pretty clear separation on my board between, Lawrence, Fields, Trey Lance, Kyle Pitts, and Jamar Chase. And then I think there's a bit of a valley going into the next round. And I know everybody's got Najee Harris as their number one player in one quarterback super flex, or not, but one quarterback dynasty rookie drafts. And I would sell that pick before I'd use that number one pick on Najee Harris. And I think all these running backs are kind of just that thirst has propelled them.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. Yeah,
it's going to be tricky, and I think that's why it's important that we really talk about those three running backs, because there are other names that I happen to like a lot, but, for the context of redraft, anybody else who could be relevant, we're not going to know as of this very moment. So, I guess if there is another name of another player you want to briefly mention, whatever, go for it. But I think for all intents and purposes, for the scope of what we're talking about now, those really are the three that carry a lot of relevance that we can project forward now. So I guess, like I said, if there is a name that you just want to highlight, go for it, whatever. But otherwise, there's some interesting wide receivers that I think are going to be fun to talk about.
So at the running back position, Ramondre Stevenson out of Oklahoma is my RB4. I've been very high on him. Ramondre Stevenson he's 220 pounds. He has the profile of and he could probably play at 240. He has the profile of a potential bell cow. Ran for 2,000 yards in college at Cerritos College, junior college, took a kind of a road less traveled. Was part of Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, always likes to use committee systems. He was in a committee in Oklahoma, got suspended at the end of last year for at the bowl game for drugs, I believe. Oklahoma starts a little bit late. And then Ramondre Stevenson didn't start the season because of that suspension, and then just kind of was gangbusters at the second half of the season. He can run through players. He can run around players. He doesn't have top-end speed. But we talked about Zach Moss. Well, if you put another, 15, 20 pounds on Zach Moss, that's kind of what I would comp. And I think he has better lateral agility than Zach Moss, but that's what I would comp Ramondre Stevenson to. This is a weak draft class. But what that means is a player like this, you're going to be able to take in the 10th, 12th round, something like that. You can just wait and see. But if there is a player that could potentially be a bell cow for an NFL franchise, I would put my money on Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, and I like Trey Sermon too, kind of in the same vein. I'm higher than him on a lot of the community is. And yeah, I completely agree on Stevenson. Those are two guys that I'm higher on than what I've seen consensusly. Just there's that tier, there's this group of guys, Kenny Gainwell and Michael Carter and Chuba Hubbard, that a lot of people are on and that kind of get pushed up. But when we're talking about ceilings on these guys, Stevenson is definitely a guy identified, and Trey Sermon too, that really do have the ceiling of, like being a late round Chris Carson type guy that ends up as a, they feed him versus some of these other guys. A guy like, Chuba might be a special player, but at the same time, he might be a guy that he's getting your 7 touches a game, and you're hoping that you can get something out of that as a high end upside. And so for that reason, Stevenson's a guy that I like, and Trey Sermon's another guy. And again, we're talking redraft. I love getting excited about everything, but usually my redraft stuff happens around Labor Day weekend because the leagues that I'm in, I'm pushing that out to the last moment, and we've seen camp and we've seen the depth charts shake out, and that's the way I approach it. But those two, Sermon and Ramondre Stevenson, are guys that I'm a little bit higher on the consensus, just because the upside is there for that full-time utility role.
Any other names, Jesse?
Yeah, just 2 real quick. I'm just going to mention them. We don't really need to discuss them too much. I like Michael Carter and Khalil Herbert a lot. I think they're pretty good guys. I'm a fan. I just like them. So. Yeah, I'm
a fan of Khalil Herbert as well. He's another dude out of Virginia Tech. I think he's interesting, I guess. Also, I just want to quickly highlight again Kenneth Gainwell. I think very, very skilled pass catcher. If he finds himself in a position where he is working to be that type of person in a committee, there could be some PPR value, and I play a lot of PPR. That's the only scoring format that I play. So, sure, go for it. There you go. That's fun. But speaking of catching passes, boom, wide receivers. Oh, wow, look at me. I'm professional. This is great. This is why they pay me the big bucks, folks. There are some interesting wide receivers, and I feel like there's one dude especially that a lot of people are super, 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 super excited about, and his name is Jamar Chase. That guy. I mean, oh my Lord. We didn't even see him last year, but oh my gosh, that season he had with Joe Burrow and LSU. I mean, good Lord, this dude, I have so many things that I could say, but just, Jeff, please tell me everything that I need to know about Jamar Chase, because this dude's built.
Yeah, he's a special player. We saw the production with him and Justin Jefferson on the field at the same time, and we saw how Justin Jefferson translated to the NFL level. I have Cincinnati taking Jamar Chase. I know everybody's going to peg that on Joe Burrow's relationship, but the Bengals run more 3 wide receiver sets than any team in the league, and everybody loves Tyler Boyd's value right now, and everybody's freaking out that if Jamar Chase it's taken that T. Higgins is going to get knocked down and Tyler Boyd's going to get knocked down. But the reality of it is, right now in that third wide receiver spot, they have Auden Tate and they have the other Michael Thomas occupying it. So putting Chase in that spot knocks those guys off the field versus knocking down Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins. And I do think that's the direction that the Bengals are going to go. Again, I think Jamar Chase, he's a physical player. He's got the speed. He's got the profile that we've seen time and time again turn into number one wide receivers in the league. And he's certainly my number one wide receiver by a good distance. I've already mentioned it a couple times that him and Kyle Pitts are really the two position players that I put well above the rest of this class. And I think the NFL draft, we're going to see the same thing play out.
Yeah, he's going to get high draft capital. I mean, you've got him, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Waddle. Jamar Chase is my player comparison for him is the Black Panther. And the reason that is because the Black Panther, when you fought him, he would use your content to build up the power and his strength, and then he could use that offensively. Well, you'll often see Jamar Chase kind of battling with a cornerback late in the route, and it seems like he doesn't release from the defender intentionally to separate from them late, to kind of push them off and separate from them late to create separation. I don't want to say he pushes off, but he will often fight, and he is a player that thrives on contact, great contested catcher. The one question about him that I have, and I just prefer kind of the wide receivers that are tremendously sudden and snap off routes and kind of make defensive backs fall. Those are just like Deontay Johnson, for example. Those are the types of receivers that I tend to gravitate towards. But, Jamar Chase it profiles as a player that you can make mistakes with. Like quarterback, throw it up to him. If he's covered, even if he's covered, he can come down with it. It's just a player that will give you a lot of confidence if you're throwing the ball to him because, again, he can erase your mistakes. And if he goes to Miami, if he goes to Cincinnati, I think that those are good situations with young quarterbacks that are going to target him a lot. I don't really have a good grasp on where you would have to draft him in redraft, but and the other thing is wide receiver is is stacked. Wide receiver is stacked.
Oh yeah.
But if you want to take a shot with Jamar Chase, go ahead. I think that he's going to be someone who could get between 8 to 10 touchdowns in his first season as a rookie.
Yeah, I've done 2 underdog best ball drafts so far, redraft style, and I've gotten Chase in both of them in the 6th round. And so that's kind of right in that range where I'm going to roll the dice on him and being the breakout rookie of this class.
Yeah, I have Waddle, Smith, and Chase as like 1A, 1B, 1C. They're all really, really good. I think it's hard to disagree. I will say about Chase, last time we saw him, he was 19. He turned 21 in March. I saw a lot of good things on film for sure. I like him a lot. I hope he ends up in Cincinnati because I love Burrow and I love Higgins, and AJ Green vacated like 100 targets or more, I think. So there's a lot to go around, I think. And, most of those targets last year for like Higgins, if you're worried about him, we're not coming from Joe Burrow, and I'm hoping Joe Burrow plays the whole year. So yeah, I like Chase. It's, like I said, 19 or whatever like that. He just turned 21 March 1st. So I'm pretty high on him. Like I said, he's, 1A, 1B, 1C, those guys. Yeah, he's pretty good. I hope he ends up in Cincinnati. I really do.
That would be so cool. Although, as a Steelers fan, I think it would. I don't want to see the Bengals get good, but for the sake of fantasy football, yes, I think that would be tremendous. And another name that was mentioned before, Devonta Smith out of Alabama. I found out recently that he and I are the exact same height and weight, so there's no way he could be good, right? Come on, he's too small. Come on, what are we talking about? There's no way. There's no way, right? Right?
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
So I hate people say that stuff more than anything in my entire life. There are people who play football at different positions, different weights, different abilities. And I don't care. This guy on film was insane. I don't care at all about any of that stuff. I'm really also, when I look at prospects, I'm really focused on game film. So like, I don't really care that much about pro day, combine stuff, his waist size, whatever. I don't care that much about that. I'm seeing some great stuff on that film, and I do not care at all about any of these. Whatever, he's small, he can't do it, whatever. He's a great player, and I hate those. They feel lazy. It's like, dude's not big enough. We see guys of all different body types do this. Come on, for real.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The problem that people have if they haven't seen anything If they haven't seen that type of player before, then they're kind of scared off to touting them highly. Devonta Smith put up ridiculous numbers, was unguardable, playing a multitude of all three wide receiver positions at Alabama. The Slim Reaper, I don't really have a lot of questions about his game. He is my wide receiver 3. I think he's my wide receiver 3. I do wonder, for all of these wide receivers, I wonder if they have the ceiling of a Devontae Adams, of a Calvin Johnson, of a DeAndre Hopkins. Are they alpha number ones, or are they high end complementary number two wide receivers, are kind of like 1B type wide receivers? There are only a couple of players that kind of reach that Julio Jones level. And I just have a question as to whether or not anyone, quite frankly, in this class can reach that kind of threshold. All of that said, Devonta Smith is going to be difficult to cover. I know that, you can't press. Well, show me show me some tape where you see a cornerback handling Devonta Smith well. Impress. Just see if you can find that for me and send it to me if you find it. And he's going to get high draft capital. So, again, just like with Jamar Chase, I don't know exactly where you have to take him, but I feel pretty comfortable about taking him in redraft and being able to plug and probably play him. Probably a better PPR wide receiver than somebody like Chase. I don't know that he's going to have the touchdown upside as somebody like Chase, because I don't know necessarily that you're going to throw the ball up to him. But let's remember, Antonio Brown won in the red zone different ways than somebody like Mike Williams, and Devonta Smith could do that. Just because he's not jumping over players and mossing him doesn't mean that he can't be utilized in the red zone.
Yeah, real quick on that too. Just Tyreek Hill is a really good red zone weapon, and he's just fast. There are different reasons for these guys to be like that. It doesn't have to be contested catchability. So just real quick, sorry.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs is not bodying people, and he's certainly able to succeed at the next level. I also have Devonta Smith as my wide receiver 3, and I think Felix nailed this class. I think he's exactly right. I think that we've talked about. I think that people have confused the depth of the wide receiver class in terms of it being a fantastic class, as you're popping out wide receiver 1s in this class. And again, I completely agree with Felix. I don't see that with this class. I think that there are a lot of guys that are going to play roles and be fantasy useful in your lineups. And the way that I approach outside of Chase, I'm a firm believer that when you're dealing with tiers, you want to be on the last end of it versus the high end of it. And so I don't know. It's hard. I've got Devonta Smith as wide receiver 3. I'm just not sure. Usually if he's landing in a range in the draft where I'm trying to find out if somebody else wants to come up and get that pick, and so that I can get some of these guys a little bit later that might end up fantasy-wise in terms of the same production. And he's a guy, too, that I don't see him projecting as a wide receiver 1 at the NFL level. I think he's going to be a fantastic wide receiver 2. And 2, the concerns on press coverage, the amount of corners in the league that run a lot of press coverage, we see a lot in the league. There's a lot of cover 3 in the league. There's just not that much press coverage that much as it kind of the narrative seems to get out there that these guys are just going to be locking up Devonta Smith at the line, and his footwork and his technical ability, I think he's going to get himself open. I'm not concerned with that. We haven't seen a guy like him. And so it's, at the NFL level, a guy coming in that weight, certainly one bad hit, but you can say the same thing with any football player, one bad hit and they're done. So in that regard, and he's also too, you gotta hit him to be able to do that too.
That's a good point. I'm really glad we got that out of the way, because I jokingly introduced it being like, oh, but he's so small. It's just like, so what? Whatever.
Well, he's certainly the most divisive player in this draft within the fantasy football community right now. It seems like the biggest lightning rod between the film crew and the analytics crew is landing right on him. And I jokingly, I've just been putting these tweets out where I jokingly am going to keep dropping and dropping. The other day I just said Devonta Smith is good at football, and I was getting people on both sides coming at me arguing that for whatever reason, I said on Tuesday I'm just going to tweet Devonta Smith with a picture of him. I'm just going to see what people say because it's just getting ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten out of hand, and it's something that I'm really glad that I have largely stayed out of because it's just it's a whole thing. But the verdict seems to be he is good at football, which is really what matters. And just based off of how the conversation's been going, it seems like there's Jamar Chase number 1, Devontae Smith wide receiver number 3. Who's that second guy? For it seems like there's a name. I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to speak for anybody. We'll start with Felix this time. Who is your number 2 in this class?
Well, my number 2 is Jamar Chase. My number 1 is Rondale.
Oh no, I goofed it.
Yeah, my number 1 is Rondale Moore, and my number 3 is Devonta Smith. So there have been 3 freshmen that have been consensus All-American. One is Herschel Walker, one is Adrian Peterson, and the third is Rondale Moore. I just like Devonta Smith. People are like, well, we haven't seen a 5'8" wide receiver excel, so we're going to write him off. Rondale Moore is hella athletic. If he were used the way Jarvis Landry was used in Miami as kind of an extension of the running game, just think of and Jarvis Landry, for as good as he was he's a sub athlete. So think about someone like Rondale Moore being used the same way on bubble screens, short things around the line of scrimmage. Being Rondale Moore being used in that capacity, he's going to absolutely smash. And I'm not saying that his ability is limited and that's the only way that he could be used. But if you give that amount of touches to Rondale Moore, I mean, he's a ridiculous player from Trinity High School right here in Louisville. I really like Rondale Moore. I don't care that he's 5'8" or 5'9", whatever he was. He ran a 4.41, can squat 600 pounds. This is a dynamic athlete. He's just coming in a package that we don't normally see. He's just coming in a package that we don't normally see. But please do not underestimate or undersell Rondale Moore.
Yeah, Jeff, you can go ahead.
I think Rondale Moore's a very special player, and a team that is going to draft him is going to have an idea of how to use him. And so in that regard, I do think that the concerns about his size and whatever else it might be are overblown. My wide receiver 2, I'm a Rashard Bateman guy. Certainly, he's almost reminds me of the Javonte Williams of the class, maybe.
That's a
in
good
terms
point, yeah.
In terms of we watch the film and we see him as a physical wide receiver, and then when he weighs in and measures in, he's smaller than what you think he's going to be,
yeah.
And so it's hard there, and certainly maybe I need to look at my ranks on where he is going after that weigh in. But I just loved what he put on film, the physicality that he showed from the wide receiver position. I think he's a guy that is going to be able to absorb targets and give you that PPR upside, hopefully. So that's why I've got him at number 2 in my rankings. Just a physical wide receiver that you can feed, and we've seen him time and time again stand up to showing that physicality. And again, talking about press coverage isn't that prevalent in the league, and I think that he's got the technical skills to be able to work in zone. And I just think that the ceiling is there for him to absorb those targets.
Jesse?
Yeah. So my number 2 is Devontae Smith. My number 1 is actually Jalen Waddle. I'm a big fan. We haven't talked about him yet, so I really like the separation. I'm not usually a guy who like falls in love with like the big play stuff and like, just like these crazy awesome like speed, great, all that stuff. But I just see him cut and I see him get separation, and it blows my mind. I think he's really good. I have Waddle, Smith, Chase. That's the way I have it currently. But I mean, I'd be fine with any of those guys at any of those 3 positions currently, like on a draft board. But yeah, I kind of fell in love with Waddle, and I'm not usually a kind of guy. Like my top 3 wide receivers last year were Jerry Jeudy, I'm trying to forgetting. Oh, T. Higgins and then Justin Jefferson. So like I like those guys. Yeah, I like those guys a lot better. Like I wasn't really big on like CeeDee Lamb, and I wasn't really big on like Laviska Shenault. So I feel like I'm not usually on this, but I really love Waddle. I fell in love with the guy's film. So
there you go. Any thoughts on the aforementioned Rondale Moore and Rashad Bateman?
Yeah, I mean, I think this receiving class is pretty deep like last year. I like both of those guys. I just have after those three guys like a glut of dudes that I really like. Like I have like Tony, the other Moore, Bateman. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown in that same thing. I like a lot of these guys.
We haven't even said Terrence Marshall, who profiles as a
I like him too. Yeah,
so,
I do like him as well.
Yeah, that's the type of thing where, again, I talked about tiers, but like I find myself like it seems like the 2.03. If you are in a superflex draft, rookie draft, the 2.03 is like the sweet landing spot where you're going to get one of these guys, you're going to get the last one of these guys, and you're kind of going to leave the decision up to other people, and you're still going to walk away with a lot of value.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, Terrace Marshall, that's a name that I feel like has been coming up a lot more recently. I don't really have too much to speak on him because, again, as has been displayed throughout this entire episode, this is not my area of expertise. But again, that's why we have other people on here to do this stuff because, I don't have to know everything. That's, I always say, I've tweeted it multiple times before or whatever, like knowledge is largely borrowed, absorbed, and reciprocated. That's how learning works. And that's the real value of what I think we're doing here. But Terrace Marshall, that's a name I think is interesting to talk about. So any thoughts on him that want to get out there?
I'm gonna wait to see his landing spot. I don't know if he's a number one, even though he's 6'2", 200 pounds or whatever, and it has all the physical ability. He's always been, except for this season, he's always been behind other really good players. I think that the comparison for him could be. What's the guy with the Jets? What we just talked about earlier?
Denzel Mims.
Yeah, Denzel Mims. I think Denzel Mims could be a good comp for Terrace Marshall. I really don't have a lot to say about him. Former 5-star prospect with LSU is going to go. He's a player that you can get later in this draft who could potentially smash. I'm probably not rostering him in redraft though. Probably I think he's going to go higher than some players that I know what their floor and ceiling is.
Yeah, I think he's a guy I've heard recently that there's some things coming out about medicals that some teams seem concerned about. We did see him in line with Chase and Jefferson early in 2019 before he got hurt the first time. His stats were right along with those guys, and he looked like he belonged right along with those guys. But then ever since then, it seemed like both of those guys went this way, and he kind of went this way, where he got hurt and he missed most of that national championship year. Then last year, the quarterback play was just subpar at LSU before he finally decided to opt out. Certainly, given his size and physicality, and then running a 4.36 40 in pro day, whatever that means, it makes you kind of open your eyes a little bit on to his full upside. But again, he's a guy that the last couple of days, it seems like there's been some questions about medicals coming out. The one thing that I do like about like guys like him or Rondale Moore that are kind of falling towards the end of the first round, if they get taken in that range, is that they're going to be landing with, obviously the Chiefs moved out, but you've got playoff caliber quarterbacks that these guys are landing with versus I think sometimes that we've seen in the past where we have wide receivers that get on these bad teams and they're expecting them to be the savior day one, and they're coming in with a bad quarterback and outsized expectations and getting a lot of money all at the same time. I think that those kind of guys, it seems like, have struggled in the past. And so that's what is appealing about the depth of this wide receiver class. And landing spot's going to be a big deal especially in terms of redraft of where some of these guys end up.
Jeff, I got maybe I misunderstood what you said, but I got 4.38 for Terrace Marshall's pro day.
Okay, 4.38.
Yeah, 4.38, 39 on the vert, and 10.5 for the broad jump.
Yeah.
I thought that would have stuck out if I had heard 4.6, but no, 4.38.
No, I said 4.36. So I was
off
by 2 times. Gotcha. Whatever.
Okay, I thought you said 4.
No,
like 4,
no.
Like, what?
No, it was
okay.
Because him and Chase ran the same time, and I thought it was 4.38, 4.36, same zone.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
all right.
Always important to have that clarification.
Yeah, there's a big difference between a 4.36 wide receiver, even on a pro day, versus a 4.6 wide receiver.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I think what you said there is something that it is very, very, very important to consider. Is the idea of some of these guys that are going to be in better situations in terms of the overall context of the team rather than the perceived, like, oh, well, they're going to this. Well, it's like, well, what other receiver could possibly get in their way? But then we forget, it's like, oh, well, like you said, well, the quarterback's bad and all this stuff. We have these weird expectations, and then, the logic bears out or whatever. Like somebody that I missed on last year was somebody like a Justin Jefferson, because I was like, oh, but Adam Thielen's already there, so what's that going to do? And blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, look at me, egg on my face. It worked out pretty goddamn well because that was a really good offense he walked into. He was a really good player, and he found his way into that relevance. So, yes, I think that, that's something that I've definitely learned as time has gone along. Look for the dudes that are going to be going into these really, really good offenses right away, even if it doesn't seem necessarily like there's a ton of opportunity for them. If the talent helps them rise to the top of the pecking order in the wide receiver core, that will happen. And then, boom, you get value out of it. Ha-ha. Look at that. And that, yeah.
And it's weird, too, because in the draft, I almost think that there's starting to be a devaluation of wide receiver, and it's different than the devaluation that we've seen with running back. It's just there are so many good wide receivers, and you look at the last handful of drafts, the first wide receiver just keeps getting taken later and later in the draft. And I'm flashing back to, I think it was 2017 or whatever the class it was with Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and John Ross at the top. Since then, we've seen the first guy usually gets taken after pick 15 or so. It seems like there's just the depth. And I think we saw it too with the wide receiver market in free agency, where Kenny Galladay was really the only guy that got paid. And people were pretty floored with what Juju Smith-Schuster re-signed with on a one-year deal. A lot of the contracts came in lower than maybe what people were expecting, just because I think teams are starting to handle the position differently. They're taking these guys a little bit later in the draft. And then also too, they're not so much throwing the big contracts at them anymore.
True that. And hey, Jesse, if you got any notes you want to throw out there to round out the wide receivers, I saved Kyle Pitts for last because it's tight end, it's rookies, it's kind of, for redraft, it's kind of difficult. I feel like we should probably just say a couple things about him anyway, because I mean, like, oh my God, unicorn alert. But just rookie tight ends for it is what it is. So yeah, any final wide receiver notes before we talk about the Florida tight end?
Yeah,
we didn't say anything about Elijah Moore. Oh, I'm just Elijah Moore, slot dynamo. Yeah. If you think that Devonta Smith had good numbers this year, Elijah Moore put up similar numbers in the SEC. This wide receiver class is deep, and Elijah Moore is a good player.
That's a good name.
I was going to mention him too. Yeah, I like Elijah Moore a lot. Two guys just real quick. I'll just say their names. I like Kadarius Toney a lot, and I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tony, I don't know. I feel like he has high floor, low ceiling for like week to week and stuff like that. Has he got like a Dante Hall comp or something like that? I like him a lot. I'm a big fan of him, and he can be kind of crazy. I don't even know if I should say this out loud. Maybe I'll just keep it in my head. But no one's Tyreek Hill, but I really like Tony. Anyway, but I like Amon-Ra St. Brown too. I think he's kind of slept on a little bit because he's just a pretty good traditional receiver. And I think that's very relevant in today's NFL. Like he can go second, 30, maybe even fourth round. And I think he would be really good as just like an outside receiver who's pretty traditional, doesn't do anything like super great. But I still like him a lot. Those are just two guys real quick. Yeah.
And then two other names that should be on radars would be Tylan Wallace and Diami Brown too. I think that those are guys that we could see have roles that could lead to having value in redraft.
There you go. And also just a name that I want to say for the sake of saying it, this is purely for Dynasty, Jalen Darden out of North Texas. Boom. Love the guy. Yeah. So I think that kind of takes care of that, I suppose. But yeah, like I said, wrap it up with Kyle Pitts. Because, I mean, again, it takes tight ends, a year, 2 years, typically around 3 in like the research that I've done for things to really develop. Because, you got to, it's a tough position to learn at the next level for a myriad of reasons. But if there were to be a, year one type of like, albeit for different reasons, obviously, because when Evan Ingram broke out, it was mostly just due to the fact that, the wide receivers around him kind of dropped like flies, and who else was there to really throw to for the Giants at that time. But I suppose if there was going to be a rookie tight end to immediately walk in and have relevance of anybody, it would be Kyle Pitts. So, I mean, just any thoughts we have about him, because he's a fascinating prospect for sure. In dynasty leagues, obviously there is a much deeper discussion to be had about his value, but since we're only looking forward 1 year, is there anything worth throwing out there about Kyle Pitts?
Alabama, good team, right? They always have good players at Alabama. Kyle Pitts put up 130 yards and a touchdown against Alabama, and he should have had about 220 yards receiving in that game. If you go to my Twitter page, I've got some videos posted where Kyle Trask just misses Kyle Pitts on what would have been a 60, 70-yard touchdown. He is a mismatch nightmare. You talked about Evan Ingram breaking out. So this is kind of the problem with tight ends. That breakout was about what, 700 yards, I think? 735 yards, if I remember correctly. And we're all high on Kyle Pitts. I mean, for him to return the value that we're going to want to see, we got to get into that, 1,000 receiving yards range and 5-6 touchdowns in his first year, which would be only like the best rookie tight end season ever. So if you're going to bet on Kyle Pitts and draft him highly, you have to hope that he has the best rookie tight end season ever. Can he? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. He's a matchup nightmare over the middle. He can line up outside. I don't think that I have said it got a lot of reaction. I said that his ability as an outside receiver was overstated, and I still stand by that. He can go out there, but I don't think that he's someone that a cornerback is scared of, meaning that he's going to run past him. He's kind of more of a physical, lanky player that uses his body control and length when he's lined up out at wide receiver. But again, the top tight ends in the NFL: Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller. Except for Waller, Kittle and Kelce, they found themselves in really good situations after being, really supreme athletes. When's the last time we've seen a first-round tight end hit on their expectations? Vernon Davis, Brandon Pettigrew, Eric Ebron, T.J. Hawkinson. T.J. Hawkinson's been fine. I don't know that T.J. Hawkinson is winning you your leagues, and he finished as the tight end 4 last year? All of that said, Kyle Pitts is definitely different. But I think tight end is a position that is more dependent on landing spot than probably any other position. Any other position, there's going to have to be a creative offensive coordinator that's going to utilize him in a certain way and not just kind of line him up in line and have him run over the middle. I mean, if you're going to return a value, get a value from him wherever you're going to have to take him, you want to see him be used as a wide receiver. You want him to see him used in the slot. You don't want to see him blocking. And we can't draw a conclusion on that really until we see his landing spot.
Yeah, I think Felix really brought it around to my points there at the end, because you look at where we're talking about him potentially going in the draft: Atlanta, Cincinnati, Miami, and Detroit, in that range from 4 to 7. All of them have some level, and maybe Cincinnati not so much, but some level that would allow him to be the second tight end in the offense / the second wide receiver in the offense. And that's where we'd see the true value would come out, would be if he were to land with in Atlanta, where Hayden Hurst is doing more of the traditional tight end stuff, or playing off of Mike Gesicki is another one of those guys that is more of a wide receiver in a tight end's body. But if he were to land somewhere that they have a established tight end doing the tight end's job and allowing him to be that second tight end / wide receiver in the offense, that's where we would really start to return value and see where he'd ended up. And, it might be the type of thing where he's that Marcus Colston cheat code where he's a tight end his very first year and he's clearly a wide receiver. And I almost wonder if there's some concern on that, if a team is going to use him almost as a wide receiver. Dynasty we might have a little situation where there's some eligibility switching in the future, and that would not be great. But certainly I think that he can do all the traditional tight end things in terms of seeing redraft value and seeing immediate production value. You'd want to see him used more in that wide receiver hybrid role.
Yeah. I guess three things about that, or about him in general. Yeah, I hope we see him more on the outside or not like inline blocking. I hope we do see that. I think it's definitely possible, and I think there's a pretty dang good upside for him. So I would like to see that. If I don't know how we're really going to do this before the draft or even before he's on the team and stuff. But
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough. But I'd love to see him out there. He could be very good value for that, I think. But also tight end sucks. Like, it's a pretty bad position, right? So I guess we're just comparing it with like whatever the top 3 or top 4, whatever you have, and then the rest is kind of it is what it is. So I don't mind taking like a chance on him, especially if he's playing not in line as much. So I like that. But also, yeah, I mean, for first year wide or tight ends are usually pretty not great, especially for fantasy. So, yeah, I'm kind of probably out on it. But I mean, compared to like the receiving class is really good. If he was like a straight up receiver, I wonder where I would rank him and like where's the prospects, because he can be that good. So, yeah.
Well, there you have it. There you have it, folks. Oh man, I thought we did a pretty good job with this. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, there will be more discussions to be had about these rookies after the NFL draft, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that. I believe it is next Monday. Instead of doing the show on Sundays, we will have our special guest Peter Howard stopping by to talk a little bit about that. And then we have another show coming up with our homie Dave Kluge to continue talking about, some of these, rookies and whatnot. So, yeah, I thought that this was a very good primer, especially, ahead of the NFL draft, and for those of you that will be, listening to this on Monday, the 26th as a podcast, hey, it'll be, super cool. Get some of these names in your head, start having that swirl around. And then as we go into, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to get a lot of these questions answered. So, I mean, I cannot thank the both of you enough for being so generous with your time and doing this show that ended up being, wow, an hour and 45 minutes long. But I think that information was very good, and I'm glad, so glad, that we made sure to bring on people that know way more about this stuff than somebody like me does. Because like I've said a dozen times or whatever already, for as good as I am at doing, sort of like the redraft, like NFL stuff, when it comes to the college stuff, I'm not nearly as plugged in. I'm not seeing nearly as much of this other stuff as people who are, especially in the Devy community and all this other stuff. It's very, very important. I can try and synthesize an opinion of an entire, college career's worth of a player in a couple months. I can try, but it will not be nearly as valuable what I have to say as to what people like you guys have to say. So Jeff, Felix, oh my gosh, thank you so much for bringing all of this information to the table. And if you want to remind people where they can find you, where they can find your work, please do so. Let the world know.
Felix, you want to go?
Yeah, at Sharpe Review on Twitter. I do want to give a plug for our draft coverage starting on Thursday. I mentioned that Cam Bradfield was going to be joining us. Brandon Carr, former Raven, Cowboy, Chief, will be joining us. Lewis Sharpe, former All-Pro offensive tackle for the Cardinals, will be joining us. Matt Waldman, Nick Whalen, Damon Parsons, Samantha Holt, Noah Hills from Breakout Finder, Brandon Hay, Kevin Coleman of Fantasy Pros. We've got, just a stacked lineup. So please follow the Campus2Canton page. Follow me at Sharpe Review.
Yeah, Jeff at For Whom J Bell Tolls. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I could plug Felix's work and what they're doing on Campus2Canton. It's absolutely fantastic. And make sure to check it out if you're involved in Devy or if you want to get involved in Campus2Canton at all. The classifieds that they have over there are fantastic to be able to find you a league to help out. And that group is so gracious and giving. I can't say enough good things about them. You can find my work with Fantasy Pros and also with GoingFor2 and also the Devy Royale on Tuesday nights with Kevin Coleman and Christian Williams. We got a podcast coming out that usually comes out the next day. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for having me on. Jesse, Herms, it's been fantastic. And Felix, it's been great to be able to talk to you.
Jeff, thank you for those kind words. Herms, you are the Hank Azaria of the fantasy community. Thank you for being on with you. Jesse, good talking to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much. It's so kind to hear all these nice things about my voice skills. Oh, geez. Oh, Jesse, please tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, I do work for the Lateral, obviously. Super fun. I did actually change my handle on thing to @BakingGamesJesse. I got to change that on here. But yeah, you can find me there at Twitter. I do also I switched. Now I have a Baking Games account. It's just Baking Games FS. So I do that there. And Yeah, it's super fun. I love this show, so very happy to be here.
Oh gosh, it is so fun doing all this stuff. Oh geez. We have so much fun at The Lateral. You can find me on Twitter at HermsNFL. You can find The Lateral at The Lateral FF on Twitter and our website, www.thelateralff.com. And we have a YouTube channel. You can find that by going to our Twitter page because the address is like youtube.com/letters, numbers, letters. And it's very, very difficult. So until that changes, just find it on there. Go for that. And also, if you go on our Twitter page and you click on our link tree, it'll take you to our Spotify page where this fine podcast comes out, where the Lateral Weekly Variety Hour-ish comes out, all sorts of stuff. Hey, maybe there will be some new podcasts soon. Who knows? Am I allowed to say that? Yes, I am, because I created this damn thing. So who cares? I can say whatever I want. This is my show, and I'll cry if I want to. Oh, gosh, thank you guys so much. Until next time. We don't have a catchphrase at the end, so I'm just going to leave that there.